Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Watching the World. We have a very amazing show lined up for each and every one of you. As you know, I was in the courtroom each day of this trial, and I met an awesome person, and her name is Blanca Cobb. She is a body language expert. And, folks, let's welcome her with a large round of applause. If we could hear it, go ahead. Blanca, tell them who you are.
Well, everybody, I'm Blanca Cobb. I'm an internationally recognized body language expert with a master's degree in psychology. And what I do in these court cases is I just break down what's obvious and what isn't obvious. A lot of times people think that they're hiding, but their body leaks their emotions or how they're feeling.
Okay, thank you very much. Today, folks, we're going to break down the juror that we see on CNN talking about what he experienced in this trial. He was an alternate juror, so ultimately he did not get a chance to vote in the final analysis. However, he did share some key points about this trial. So we're very fortunate to have Blanca here today. We're going to go through the video, go through each moment, each question, and examine his answers. And today you'll get to understand the body language of the man. And I think it's going to be amazing. So with no further ado, we're going to get started here with this particular video. All right.
Joining me now is an alternate juror who was in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. George is joining us right now. This was 7 weeks of your life, hearing all of this testimony. You were an alternate, you did not deliberate, but did you agree with the final verdict?
I understood the final verdict, and I think if I, because I took a copious amount of notes overall. I took 350 pages worth of notes. Because at the end, we weren't told who was an alternate, who was the main juror until literally the last second when they were reading when the judge was reading his entire statement at the end. It was like the first 12 of you are the jurors, the last 5 are the alternates. So we didn't know, even in the jury room, no one treated everyone, we all were equal because we didn't know who was who.
Would you have acquitted him?
Okay, so Blanca, what do you think so far in regards to George?
First, let's start by setting this up for everybody. When a juror is going to give an interview, and yes, he is an alternate juror, so he didn't deliberate, exactly what you said, Mel. But when they come on and they're going to give an interview, in my opinion, it's about transparency and letting us know what happened in terms of their thoughts and their feelings, how they looked at the case, what evidence brought questions, what testimony brought questions. It gives us, the public, a better understanding of the case, of the judicial system, what seems to be working, what doesn't seem to be working. It's like they're giving a bird's eye view. So having said that, I feel like there should be more transparency. So let me just jump right in. So he was asked, Laura Coates is a CNN anchor, and she asked, do you agree with the final verdict? The first thing he said was, I understand the final verdict. This is a yes or no question. Do you agree? This is where we want to hear his opinion, his insights. He said he took 350 pages of notes, copious notes. So there's a lot of observations in those notes. There was a lot of thoughts and beliefs and opinions and probably question marks also in those notes. This is what we want to hear, what he can share with us. Because I don't know if judicially there's certain things that jurors can or cannot speak to. I'm not an attorney, so I can't speak to that. But what they can share, I feel like it should be forthright. So he did not answer the question. He said, I understand. And if you'll notice, he has, looks like a black bracelet on his, or dark colored bracelet on his left wrist, and he starts playing with it. Now, it could be on television, and it can be nerve-wracking for anyone to be on camera, right? So that's a natural response. Or it could be that he's uncomfortable in giving his answers. And although he's talking and he's looking at the CNN anchor, Laura, he might be uncomfortable. And when we have pent-up anxiety or stress, our body finds a way of releasing it. One way it could be released is playing with that bracelet.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Let me ask you a question about this particular juror. I noticed that during the day, he would often be looking out into the audience where we're sitting kind of examining and scrolling through. Is that pretty normal?
Well, I was in the courtroom also, so everybody, but I was not in the courtroom every single day like Mel. I was there, I think, a total of 6 days over 3 different weeks. Anyway, when I was in there, I did notice it was like almost when the jury came in the morning, and then after breaks and after lunch, whenever they walked into the room, he stood in his position and he would just like look out at the galley, just like take everybody in, and he'd have a pleasant smile, a pleasant look on his face. But he was just like taking it all in. And when I analyze body language, I always look to see what stands out. Well, that really stood out because all of the other jury members, they didn't look at the galley. They didn't look at the audience. They were just looking straight ahead or looking down, or maybe looking at the prosecution or defense, but they really weren't scoping the lay of the land the way this particular juror, George, was doing. He was just like sizing it up, taking it in.
Yeah, I was a little concerned about him because as he would leave each day, he would be looking in the audience. It's almost like he wasn't watching where he was going. So I was like, I hope he doesn't walk into the wall.
Yeah, I could see that too. But he definitely was taking it in, just looking around.
Okay, very good. So let's get back to the video and see the next question here.
Enrico?
I think reading all my notes and looking back at the evidence, I probably would have reached the same conclusion as the other jurors.
What was it about that charge?
I don't, the thing with the when it, because we were asked and the judge had instructed us that we have to find, we have to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Mm-hmm. And I think there was always a little bit of doubt in people's mind. And I think it was a tough case to prove, especially the first one. And, there was always a little bit of doubt there, even from the beginning.
Why did you doubt?
So what did you think about the RICO? That was his question.
Okay, when Laura asked him, would you acquit on RICO? He said, reading my notes and going over the evidence, probably I would have reached the same conclusion as the other jurors. So he's hedging here. And sure, we can give him the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, he wasn't in the deliberation room, which means he didn't have an opportunity to talk to his colleagues, right, the other jurors, about the evidence in its entirety, or talk as a group about any types of questions they might have had about testimony or evidence. However, he's referring to these notes, these copious amount of notes, these 350 pages of notes that he took, and he says he probably would have reached the same conclusion. During this time also, if you look again closely, he's playing with that bracelet on that left wrist once again, which could be some anxiety, some stress. Sometimes people just don't want to share what they really feel, and so they kind of dance around a straightforward answer. They kind of tiptoe. And this is what I'm hearing in the language. When Laura asked him, what was it about that charge? He goes, I don't. He automatically starts off with the negative, I don't. We can probably assume correctly that he was going to say, I don't know. But he went on to say, I don't, I think because we were asked, the judge instructed us that we had to find, we have to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I think there was always, listen to that word, always a little bit of doubt in people. He's not talking about his opinion here. He's talking about the group. We can only assume, I think correctly, that he's talking about the other jurors. And he says, yeah, from the beginning, I think, this was a tough case to prove. So we have this language of, I think, probably, maybe, perhaps. When people use this type of language, they're not committed to their thoughts or to their opinions. And then when you go on to say, always, how does he know it was always a little bit of doubt? That implies there had to have been some type of conversation. When he goes, he said there was always a little bit of doubt in people. Who are these people? Since he was only allowed to be with the other juror members, I think it's a correct assumption that he's talking about the other jury members. And always, that's a very strong, absolute word to use. How does he know this? So that gives us pause in terms of his answer, because he's not committed to saying one way or the other. He's trying to loop in other people.
Wow, it's so captivating just to hear you break this down. Do you think that it's coming from him not paying attention, or is he trying to be evasive?
That's a great question. And I'm thinking because where I was in the courtroom in the days that I was there, he was hiding, not hiding, that's the incorrect word. Where he was sitting, the big screen, if you'll remember,
Right.
that big TV screen where people in the galley could see the evidence, he happened to be sitting behind that. So I should only speak for myself, I couldn't see him. But there were times I did see him lean forward when he was looking at his own little screen in front of his jury seat. So it could be a lack of paying attention. I can only talk about the times that I was in there, but and the times that I could actually see him. He did appear, in my opinion, the times that I could see him, like he was attentive. But perhaps from your viewpoint in the courtroom, you may have had a different angle from where you were sitting to where he was, and you may have seen something differently.
Yeah, I noticed a lot that even during the day while sitting, he would often be peering into the audience, almost like he would stop and stare at each person. Sometimes he would look at me for a while and kind of wonder maybe why I'm there all the time or something. He's just so interested in the audience and each person throughout. I found that, I was intrigued by that.
That could give the impression of being distracted, particularly during testimony, if he isn't directing his attention at the witness stand, right? Or at the attorneys who are talking at that moment. If he is looking around the room, it definitely could give the impression that he was distracted.
I did notice that a lot of jurors were sleeping, but throughout, I never really noticed him sleeping. He was always alert, although he seemed to be a little here and there looking around. So thank you for this very deep insight. Let's go further into the video. I'm going to back it up a little bit so we catch the next question.
And there was always a little bit of doubt there, even from the beginning.
Why did you doubt?
I think some of the charges, some of the witnesses, if you look at it one way, but then when you were listening to the defense, you could see it their way as well.
Were there any?
Okay, what do you think about that?
Here again, we hear the same type of language, this vagueness, this generalities. I think some of the charges, some of the witnesses, okay, we want to know what he believes, what he thinks. It would have been great for him to say, these charges I had issue with, or I had questions about. These witnesses made me pause or made me think X, Y, or Z. That would have been really helpful for us to know. Then he goes on to say, if you look at it one way and then listen to the defense, you could see it their way as well. There's no ownership here. The point of the interview is, what is your opinion, George? You are the alternate juror. So when someone says, well, if you, not me, he's not speaking from his perspective now. He's talking about the other person, somebody else. If you were to look at it one way and then you listen to the defense, you could see it their way as well. Instead of owning it and just saying, look, I could see what the prosecution was saying. I could see their way, but I could also see what the defense was saying because of X, Y, and Z. That just comes from a place that he's really sharing his thoughts, his beliefs, his opinions. And again, in my opinion, if a juror is giving an interview, that's what they're there for, to share what they believe, what they think, what they experienced.
Hearing you break this down makes me wonder. It's so intriguing about one person, and we have 12 of them. In fact, there were 18 in all if you factor in the complete group, including the alternate jurors. So this is quite exciting. I hope more of them come forward and talk about what they saw and heard. So let's go right back and listen to the next question. I'll back it up a little bit.
Their way as well.
Were there any witnesses that made you think, I don't believe this?
There was one that I think unanimously we kind of all said, like, wow. Like, it was almost like watching like TV. It was like, like when I think her name was Dawn Richard, that one. When she on cross-examination. I mean, I never saw such a cross-examination. It was very impressive to watch.
What was it?
Okay, what do you think about this in regards to Don Richard?
This is very loaded for me, and I'm going to explain why. Let me try to unpack this. He says something that is just a huge red flag for me. He says unanimously, we all said, whoa, wait, stop the press, pump the brakes. As jurors, the days that I was in there, the judge clearly said at the end of every day, jurors, make sure, and I'm paraphrasing here, jurors, make sure that you don't look at anything about this case online. Don't talk to anyone about this case. You're not allowed to talk about this case with anyone. You had to wait until deliberations. So for him to say unanimously, that's a loaded word right there. That's a powerful word. And then he said, we all said, wow, when did this happen? First of all, did it really happen? If it happened, that's a big no-no. That's going against a judge's instructions. I think that's huge. Second of all, if it happened, when did it happen? And third, because he's already demonstrated this language, this vagueness of, I think, maybe, I probably would have came to the same conclusion. Since he's not owning any of his opinions, this just might have been just talking out of turn, that he's believing that he thinks all of the other jurors would have believed the same thing. However, it's still a very strong statement to say, like, I wouldn't speak on anyone's behalf. That's huge. And then when he laughed a little bit, he chuckled, not an outwardly laugh, but he kind of giggled to himself when he was talking about the defense, the cross-examination, that it was very impressive to watch. Okay, that could be happening because a couple of reasons. One, that giggle, sometimes when people get nervous, they'll actually chuckle, they'll laugh. And everybody else is going, wait, what's so funny about this? Like, there's nothing funny about this. But that's just how some people handle that stress. It could also be that he was focusing more on the theatrics than on the trauma, on the alleged trauma that was being discussed. And I say this because it can put an emotional distance in what he's hearing in that cross-examination, because listen to his words. He goes, impressive. It was impressive cross-examination. It was like a TV show. And then he goes on to say, and I think in the next clip, it was like a takedown. I mean, those are some powerful descriptors there. So maybe he's seeing it more on the theatrical side of how the defense presented or went through the cross-examination than really looking at it from the victim's perspective. Or it could be, a chuckle could be like, wow, like when he said he was impressed, it was like, whoa, I didn't even realize this, cross-examination could be that way, that it was like almost like a laugh to underscore any type of impression that he had, which was a favorable impression. He even said so.
Do you think this involved like coaching for him to say these type of things, or some of these just go-to words that he normally uses?
It could be his regular everyday language, and that's an excellent point that you bring up, Mel. It definitely could be his everyday language. This could be him. This is the only video that I have seen of George, this alternate juror. So it definitely could be. I don't think he was coached. I think if he was coached, he would own his opinions. He would own his thoughts. He would say, this is what I saw. This is what I believed. This is why. These are the witnesses that gave me question. This is a testimony that I didn't understand, because he would be talking completely from his perspective.
I noticed quite a few times he says riveting. Is that normal that people have go-to words in
Yes.
day-to-day conversation?
Oh, yeah. Think about someone in your life, and I'm going to make something up now here, or maybe anyone who's listening right now. Just think about that one person who always says something like, awesome. Everything is awesome. That's just awesome. Or cool. That was cool. That was cool. Hey, you know what? That was cool. And you go like, can you just change your word? Can you find something else to say? It definitely can be too. It could just be their go-to words.
Okay, very good. So we're going to go to the next question. And I'm going to back up a little bit.
Cross-examination. I mean, I never saw such a cross-examination. It was very impressive to watch.
What was it about it?
I think just how the defense, got into her and really made her, look very not credible. I mean, I even wrote in my notebook that it was like a takedown.
Really? And that was
Yeah.
pretty early on.
That was pretty early on.
From the opening statements, did you have a mindset of who you thought had a better case?
No, I think overall.
Okay, so in this particular time, he actually says no. What are your thoughts on that? He answers.
If we look at baseline behavior, how someone typically handles themselves, and we're looking at this video, so far in all the questions, he hasn't interrupted Laura, the CNN anchor. This time, she doesn't even get the full sentence, the full question out of her mouth, and he just jumps right in with like, no, no. And then you can hear she's trying to say something about mindset. I think that was a word she used. And he's like, no. So there's something about this that maybe he wanted to make sure that everybody understood that he was being impartial. So from the get-go, he didn't have an opinion about whether the defense was better than the prosecution or the prosecution was better than the defense. But it was interesting to me that this particular question, he started answering before the question was completed, and that says something.
Okay, let me continue here. That was a short one.
I think in the way I look at it, both sides presented really good. You know, both sides presented themselves well. We were very impressed with the prosecution and the defense, how they, you know, their professionalism, how they carried themselves. I mean, it was really good lawyering, as they say.
Racketeer.
Okay, what are your thoughts?
That's him trying to be impartial, not to say whether he thought the defense was better than the prosecution or the prosecution was better to the defense. That's why he said they were both very professional. They handled themselves well. It was good lawyering. So this is him playing neutral, being neutral.
So sometimes he does directly answer, but sometimes he add more words. So when he's adding the words, is he trying to convey his thoughts and get his points over, although as though he has an agenda, or no?
I'm not sure I would say he has an agenda. I think he's being reflective. He's giving an answer that he's comfortable giving. And depending on the question, all the questions aren't created equal. Some asking about the prosecution and defense, that isn't as provocative as, do you think the X witness was telling the truth? Do you think Y witness was lying? I mean, those are provocative, right? That's where you have to put your neck on the line and get an opinion. And then part of this is pushback. Sometimes people don't tell exactly how they feel, because what if somebody disagrees? Or what if people disagree? What if there's any type of criticism?
How do you tie in the facial expressions with the words and just be so accurate as you are?
You want to make sure that what's presented in the face or in the body goes along and supports and aligns with the words. For example, if I say I'm angry, but I'm laughing as I'm really angry at you, Mel, you'll be like, girl, be quiet. You're not angry at anybody. Because I'm laughing, it doesn't go. The emotions, the mannerisms, the gestures have to echo the words, because when there's a disconnect, when it doesn't match up, what happens is people will believe the body language more than they believe the words. Let me give you an everyday example. Think about when you see somebody that you know, or you're walking down the street and you're like, hey, what's up? How's it going? And someone's like, fine. They're saying the right words, that they're okay, but that flat affect, I'm not looking at you or looking down, or their tone of voice lets you know that everything isn't okay, but you don't have any skin in the game, so maybe you don't pursue it. But it's that mismatch. That's why a lot of us are like, sure, they're not fine. But that's what people want to convey with their words. But what they don't realize is that how they say it, their facial expressions, their tone of voice, the speed in which they're talking, their mannerisms, their gestures, their position of their body, whether they're turned towards you or away from you, all of those little messages communicate something about how someone's feeling in that moment.
I'm pretty sure you have everybody excited and they want to learn how to do this. Is this something that they can pick up on YouTube or reading books, or it requires a high-level training?
You can get a good basic understanding by watching videos, by reading books. There's some excellent books out there. There's some very well-respected body language experts out there that you can study under. for me, I would tell anybody, this is practice. It's like anything else. You can read something in the book, but you have to apply it. You just can't open a cookbook, for example. I'm going to use a basic example here. You just can't open a cookbook and create a 5-course meal without practicing, without preparing, without trying different seasonings and tasting. Oh, it's cook this way, or maybe I cook it a little more, cook it a little less. What kind of pan do I want to use? It's trial and error. It's practice. It's like any other skill. You have to have practice, and then you have to have someone who really knows it, who can help your thinking, can go, ooh, wait a second, that's not quite right. Let's look at it this way. Or someone to say, yep, you're on the right track. You need that guidance. You need that feedback in order to be really good at this.
Is it something you turn on and off? Like, are you doing this with your kids and your family members, or you do it when it's time calls for it?
Great question. For me, it kind of sits on idle.
Oh.
So what that means is when I meet people, I'm not trying to size people up. I'm just not. It's exhausting. If you're always on, it's exhausting. To me, it's just like, I don't want that level of pressure or stress. So I just have a normal conversation with people. It's when something stands out, like I was talking about earlier, when something is just different, it just doesn't match up, then I'm like, ooh, wait a second. And it isn't to find someone lying. It isn't to catch somebody. It's to understand the other person. Because when people feel understood and accepted and seen, you're more likely to be able to have a better conversation and to have a healthier relationship with somebody.
Thank you for that breakdown.
Yeah.
Let's continue here.
Really good lawyering, as they say.
Racketeering is notoriously a complex case. Did you feel that the prosecution presented enough evidence to support that there was even an enterprise?
I
think they did the best that they could, but I think it was a tough case to prove.
Why?
That was an enormous deep breath. What's going on here?
This time, he took an opportunity to think, to be reflective, to take that deep breath and to pause before he gave an answer. And he wasn't like one of the previous questions when the CNN anchor had asked him about I forget the exact question. Oh, from the onset, did you have the mindset who had the better case? Before she could even finish, he was like, no, right? He jumped the gun there. This one, he let her finish the whole question, and then he was like, oh, hold on. Take a deep breath. One, you can take a deep breath to calm your nerves. Another reason people take a deep breath is just to think, right? It gets more oxygen into your brain. It helps us think a little better. And just to pause to think. And then he said, I think it was a very difficult case to prove, or difficult point to prove. So he took some time there to be reflective before he answered. And also his answer that he gave, he didn't own an answer. He didn't say no or yes. He bought a little bit of time. And it's almost like the way he worded it, it's almost like you don't want to tell somebody that they're wrong or no. So you find a way to tiptoe around the criticism, if you will. It was a difficult case to prove, right?
So today, everyone, we have Blanca Cobb. She is a body language expert, and she's breaking down the reactions and the body language of the juror that was an alternate juror on the Sean Puffy Diddy Combs case. A lot of people in the audience are asking what's going on. We have a lot of people in the room. Please hit the like button, share and subscribe. Folks, you see, I bring you the top-notch people. I actually had the privilege of sitting in court with Blanca, and we shared notes, and we had a really good time examining this particular case. Blanca, please tell everyone where to find you.
You can find me on YouTube, Blanca Cobb, Body Language Expert. So if you want a deeper dive into not only court cases, but just people in general, be sure to check out my videos. Blanca Cobb, Body Language Expert on YouTube. And then you can find me on TikTok, Blanca Cobb, Instagram, Blanca Cobb, X, formerly known as Twitter, Blanca Cobb.
So I have a unique question for you. You're the opposite of me. You have a resting smile face. I have a resting serious face. Can you decipher all these body languages with two extremes?
What do you mean?
Does it make it hard that I have a resting, serious face and you're smiling all the time for you to discern what the real body language and how I feel about matters?
Oh, I see. Not really. And I'm going to tell you why. Because we all have a baseline of how we typically interact with other people and the world. How we show up is what I'm trying to say. Some people are going to be happy and smiley and energetic, or they might talk fast or talk loud. Somebody might be a little more serious, might have a calm tone of voice, might be more reflective when they answer, may not get energetic when they talk. So those are two different types of baselines. So what happens is if I get really serious about something and you don't see me smile or you don't see me use my hands, that you're like, ooh, wait a second. All right, what just happened? What was the conversation? What was the question? What's going on with Blanca? Because her baseline behavior has changed. For you, since you're saying you're more serious and you're more mellow, if at some point, let's say you close down even more, or you did the opposite and you got animated, then that would be your aha moment. People would be like, okay, what just happened with Mel? Because he's normally not this way. So that's why knowing somebody's baseline behavior is super important.
Okay, very good. Now, the last question that Ms. Coates asked was why, so we're going to see what his answer is.
I mean, when you look at the charges, kidnapping, arson, forced labor, the government had one side, but then the defense, they had some pretty good rebuttals to it. So I mean that I think added some doubt always, and I think in people's mind.
What do you think about that answer?
Okay, this would have been a great time for him to say, this is what the government did. Here are the points. They said A, they said B, they said C. And then he talked about the defense and their rebuttals. We don't know what he knows, right? We're not experiencing this through his eyes. This would have been great for him to say, yeah. And when the defense had this rebuttal to this witness or this piece of evidence, that gives us an understanding of where he's coming from. Then that allows us, the public, to see the situation through his eyes, which is more informative and that can educate us. Again, like I said at the beginning of our interview, I think that's a very big reason why jurors should be giving interviews, is to help inform the public of the judicial system, of the particular case, of the evidence, the questions, the moments of pause, or, oh yeah, this really convinced me because of 1, 2, and 3. And then he goes on to say, and it always added a little bit of doubt. Here's that word again, always. Why is it always? And then what was the doubt? So he's talking, but he's really not saying anything. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because we're not understanding his point of view. He's not being specific. He's being vague.
Vague and ambiguous, right?
That's right.
That's what comes off. I notice that a lot of people interact that way. Is that a sign that they don't want to be bothered? Or could we read into when people are using these broad terms like always or whatnot?
That should give us pause. If you were to hear someone use always or never, it really should give you pause, because it is hardly ever that something is always, except the sun always comes up and always goes down. The moon always comes up, the moon always goes down. In those situations, it is proven. But other times, no, we're not always happy. We're not always sad. We're not always right. We're not always wrong. So listening to that should give you pause and go, wait a second. Why are you using this superlative, this fluffy word? What are you trying to convince? Because a lot of times that isn't accurate. Not trying to say that someone's being intentionally deceitful. It's just not accurate.
So how are we doing so far? Is this guy really expounding on this case, or he's not really telling us much at all?
In my opinion, he's not telling us very much at all. Because one thing we haven't talked about yet is that actually we have. He keeps, when he wants to give an opinion, he says, I think we, meaning him and the other jurors. I think we believe this. I think we're okay with this. How do you know? And then why are you being the representative for everybody else? Particularly since you haven't deliberated. He should only be talking from his perspective, not from everybody else's. Having said that, sometimes people feel more comfortable either having a positive or negative opinion if they're not alone, if they're not standing alone. Because if we have it as a group, and I've got my buddies, or I have my colleagues, or I have my pals with me, then I can have more confidence in what I'm saying. Because I'm not alone, because I can't be wrong if everybody else agrees with me. It just gives more, it helps someone have more confidence.
That's a great.
They believe that they have more confidence, I should say.
Great explanation. All right, so we're going to go further here.
Didn't hear from some of the people the government said were co-conspirators, like employees,
like Christina Coram, and,
for example, or D-Rock.
Yeah.
Did that affect your thoughts about the case?
I don't think so. No.
Would you have wanted to hear from them?
We always thought that maybe we would hear from them, but maybe we also understood maybe why they wouldn't be called.
Why?
Okay, so that's like 3 questions in one.
Yeah. And I can just give you one big answer for all those 3 questions. It's groupthink. We always thought we'd hear from them. How does he know? How can he speak for the group? For whatever reason, this particular juror, alternate juror, doesn't feel comfortable putting his stake in the ground. He's not comfortable saying, this is what I thought. Yeah, I thought we would hear from them. It would have been nice to hear from Christina Coram because I would want to know X, Y, or Z. It didn't matter to me, because he goes on to say, like, nah, it didn't really matter to us that these other people didn't testify. Then tell us why. First, stake your claim and then say why. It didn't matter. And this is why it didn't matter. Because the defense poked holes in this, or whatever his answer would have been. That gives us more confidence in what he is saying.
So many times the judge said the jurors were not to talk to each other or discuss the case. This gives you the idea that perhaps he's saying we so much. Could we come to the conclusion that they were perhaps at times discussing matters amongst themselves?
Oh, yeah. And if he's doing that and he rat out everybody, yikes. I mean, that is a whole nother judicial issue, because that would go against the explicit instructions of the judge, who clearly said, you all are not allowed to talk about this case with anyone, including yourself. Don't go searching for information on the internet. And this is all being paraphrased, but this was the message, that they are supposed to get no outside information. They need to use their own eyes and ears based on what they're seeing and hearing in that courtroom as evidence and testimony to make their own decisions. When you get in the deliberation room, that's where all of you come together to discuss your opinions, your beliefs, your ideas, your questions, not before. So if he's inadvertently, if he's accidentally telling on the group, I can't imagine this is going to go well.
Wow. You perform at such a high level. I think tomorrow everybody's going to be examining words coming out of other people's mouths.
We should. And we should examine how we're talking also.
Definitely.
Because it's either going to increase our credibility or decrease our credibility.
When these conversations are happening in real time, are you like calculating and coming to these conclusions right away? Or you have to write a report like the psychologists and all these other people?
Great question. And it depends. And the reason it depends is because if everything is coming at once, my mind can only accept certain bits of information. So I can get a yellow flag here, a red flag there, going, okay, got to be careful. This didn't match up. So that's why it's great to have video, because then later on, I can go back and watch the video. But a lot of times, having said that, I do need to correct what I'm saying in one regard, because in everyday life, when we are having a conversation with somebody and something doesn't add up, we go, this isn't right. What you're saying doesn't make sense to me. But when you're allowed to ask questions, so if you're having a conversation with somebody, then you can ask questions. When you're in the audience listening, like we were in that courtroom, there is no, hold on, time out, let's play back, replay. There's none of that that's happening, right? So you have to be pretty quick and picking up. So what I did when I was in there and I would take notes, I have my own little system where I would write in one color the body language, and then I'd use another color for words. And I'd have to be super quick in doing that. And then later on, I could give that more thought.
Do you see any leadership qualities coming from this individual, just from the standpoint of how he's talking so far?
What do you mean?
Is he more of a follower or a leader based on his answers so far?
I think he's more of a follower. Most leaders put their stake in the ground for right or for wrong, for criticism or no criticism. This is what I believe, and I'm going to tell you why I believe it. Okay, you have a different opinion. Great, let me hear it. Okay, I hear what you're saying, and I don't agree with you because of X, Y, and Z. You bring up a good point. I'm going to give it some thought. That's a leader. A leader owns what they feel, regardless of any type of criticism. They own their thoughts, even though they may not be sure. But there's some ownership, there's some stake, there's some skin in the game. And I have not heard that yet from this juror. I think there was one time maybe in the interview when he was talking about Cassie Ventura that he said he believed her. But then in the next breath, he was like, no, I don't think we did. I mean,
Yeah.
So it's confusing.
Yeah, he seems more like a follower from what I'm getting from it. All
Yes.
right, let's check out the video.
Because maybe they didn't want to testify, or they wouldn't really be proving the case, or maybe it would be not advantageous to be called. So, but honestly, we were just waiting till the end, until when the judge gave his instructions and how to interpret the law. Because I think everyone really didn't have anything made up, their mind made up, or in any way. It was really, everyone was waiting to see how, the definitions and how everything was going to be interpreted and what they were to be looked at. Exactly.
So important.
Yeah.
He was caught in some and then he caught an idea. What's happening with this individual now?
Are fillers. When he says, that's a filler. And sometimes people will say, because they don't want to own their opinion. They want for you to put two and two together. So that's a way to sidestep what they're really feeling. So it can be filler. It can be nervous. It can also be a way to have a momentary pause to think about what he's going to say. That's why you hear the ums or the ahs or the ums, right? But then he also says that they had to wait until, we had to wait until the end, until the end. So again, it's this group think. Instead of, I wanted to wait until the end, I wanted to wait until I got the judge's instructions, it's we. And that begs the question, how do you know, and when did you and the other jurors have this conversation, when you're not supposed to be talking about this case at all? I mean, correct me, Mel, isn't that what you heard from the judge also? Do I have a misunderstanding of this?
That's how he ended every day. You can't do this.
Right, you cannot have any type of discussion, period. So and then he said, no one had their mind made up. How does he know nobody had their mind made up? That's an assumption, but where is he getting this thought? It'd have been better for him to say, I didn't have my mind made up. I wanted to wait until the end. But to bring other people into the fold just to be able to support your position, he doesn't come across very confident in what he's saying.
Have you ever been called to maybe break down a deposition or something of the sort?
No. Not a deposition. No.
It seems like your talent, your skills would be good for a jury consultant because you have such great analytical skills.
Yes, there are many body language experts who do serve as jury consultants.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that makes sense. Okay. Let's get back to the video.
Talk to me about the sex trafficking cases, because of court charges. Obviously, Cassie Ventura testified visibly pregnant for days.
Yes.
How did her testimony impact you in your understanding of the case?
It did. You know, I listened. You know, we listened very intently. It was, I think, 5 days or forever of thing, and you know, it was very riveting. And it was very riveting testimony, and very credible testimony.
You believed her.
Okay, he's saying again a lot. What is that conveying?
Here he starts off, it didn't, and then he says, we listened very intently. Again, he's bringing in the other jurors saying, we all listened to this. It was riveting testimony. It was very credible testimony. Okay, now, so that's positive, right? It was riveting. It was captivating. It got my attention is what he's saying. And he says it was very credible. Credible means believable, right? These ums and these ahs that we're hearing, again, these are filler words. It makes him not come across as a very articulate speaker. This helps him buy some time in thinking. And for some people, it is just a bad habit of using these ums as they're talking to buy them a little bit of time when they're talking.
Is it possible to get these out of your vocabulary?
Absolutely. So many people who speak practice, and one big thing is to pause, to actually be quiet. Take a pause like I'm doing, and then start back talking. Start up talking again. And the reason that can be so powerful, that pause, one, it gives somebody, a person, a chance to reflect on what you just said. And two, it comes across as you're being thoughtful. You're thinking about what you want to say next. A pause can be very powerful.
Thank you for that breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we did. I think we did. I mean, she wouldn't have done all this just to come up there and you know, lie about everything. So no, I don't think even the defense didn't come out and say it or anything like that.
Did the money that they talked about in terms of a civil settlement she received, did that color her testimony for you at all?
I don't think so, no. I don't think so, no.
Did you look?
Yeah.
What about the repeating?
Okay, well, let's go back a little bit. First, he says her testimony is very credible. Then Laura, the CNN anchor, pushes him politely, you know, so not figurative, I mean, not literally, but figuratively, wants to go, oh, wait, it was credible evidence, so you believed her? And then he backs off. And he goes, I think we did. I think we did. So then this is like talking out of both sides of your mouth. If it was credible testimony, then why didn't you believe her? But he can't go there. He's like, ooh, whoa, what did I just say? So I'm going to backtrack and I'm going to say, I think. He's not confident there. He's not owning it. And he says, I think we did. I think we did. I think we believed her. You can't have it both ways. It's either you believe her and it was credible, or it wasn't credible and you didn't believe her. Or if there were some parts that you believed and other parts you didn't, this would be your time to clear the air. This would be your time to speak. But the way he does it, it doesn't make any sense.
Do you think a lot of this has to do with paying attention?
It could be. I just think for whatever reason, he's not confident taking a stand. He's not confident in saying, yeah, I believed her. Now that the case is over, the jury has spoken and they have made their decision. Unless he's not paying attention to what's happening online and he's not listening to any news and he's not talking to other people, he has to know how polarizing this verdict has been for so many people. He has to know there are people that are for and against that verdict, right?
Right.
And if he knows that, it might give him some caution, some pause to say, ooh, I'm not sure what I really want to say, because perhaps he doesn't want any pushback. He doesn't want any criticism.
Thank you for that breakdown. So let's get back to the video.
At the defendant, Diddy Combs, differently after her testimony?
No, I didn't really look at him too much. I mean, I always looked at him because my point of view was just literally at him, like some people are on the side, but I was more in the corner. So I was always like staring at him. But I don't think he was mostly just very composed and talking with his lawyers and very in control. It seemed like, you know, because I think I mean, I'm not really familiar too much with cases and I don't really follow, you know, cases in court, so I don't know how defendants usually act. But sometimes what I've heard in you know, from the news is that some defendants, you know, they just sit very stoically. They don't interact with their lawyers. They just let their lawyers talk and go. But he was very, you know, talking with them, writing notes, doing that. So you could tell that he, you know, he was, you know, he was fighting for himself.
So now he gives an evaluation of Diddy. What are your thoughts?
Now he wants to share. He's saying, okay, the defendant seemed to be really invested in the outcome of the trial. He's communicating with his attorneys. He's writing notes. He's passing notes. He seemed to be engaging. Going back to the beginning, though, of this clip, I don't think he understood the question, because I don't believe that the CNN anchor Laura Coates meant it literally. I think she meant it figuratively. How do you see him now after knowing this information? Did it change your opinion, your perception? I don't think he understood that, because his answer indicated, no, I could physically see him. And then that jostled the commentary about Diddy being invested in his own defense and writing notes to his attorney.
The way that he's breaking it down, can we trust that the jurors come to an accurate decision in these cases, these complicated cases?
We cannot, in my opinion, we can't judge the whole jury based on one person. Okay. He is just one person. And I believe that if there were any questions from the other jurors, they would go, wait a second, I'm not understanding this. Explain this. Or, you know, 5 of us are saying this, you're saying this, help us understand. I think there would be some dialogue. I think there would be some discussion. At least I would like to think that.
Okay, so it seemed like a rather short video, but we're just halfway through. So maybe we could come back and chop it down another time, because I know there's people in the audience. There's so many questions. So I want to get in a few questions. I like to keep people to the time that we have spoke about before previously. So we were there. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, this is Satonia says, I think from the onset when I came on, the question of him looking around the gallery, I think now that we're here, he was talking it all, and because of some point he's remembering he's an alternate. What are your thoughts on that?
Could be. I mean, that's a possibility. Unless we ask him, have the opportunity to ask him and say, hey, what was going on in your mind as you were looking around the room? What was going on for you? We really can't know, but I do think it's a possibility.
Okay, very good. Tyler says, looks like he smiles when speaking of Diddy.
That's a good observation. He might be. To him, George did say he's not very familiar with a lot of trials. Perhaps it made an impression on him with Diddy communicating with his attorneys and writing all these sticky notes that you and I saw that he would pass to different attorneys, right? It's just like George was saying, like he was defending, you know, he's fighting for his own freedom. He was fighting for himself. Maybe that made a favorable impression to this alternate juror, George, and that's where the smile comes from. Or maybe it was a surprise also, like, wow, I didn't realize that people are that invested in their defense.
Okay. Please tell everyone how to find you again. We have a lot of people, new people in the room, and I just want them to be able to know who you are and how to find you.
Yeah. You can find me on YouTube, Blanca Cobb, Body Language Expert. I have all different kinds of videos there, not only about court cases, but just people in general. Just how to have better relationships and communication dynamics with other people. And then I'm always open to suggestion too. So if there is something that you want me to take a look at, let me know. And you can find me on Instagram and TikTok and X, formerly known as Twitter, at Blanca Cobb.
I'm telling you, this is an awesome show. I am so perplexed by what you've been breaking down. You know, we really need more of this from you. The Tea Lounge says, and guys, the Tea Lounge was at the courthouse every day too. Go check her out. She has an awesome channel, has a lot of panels as well. She says he doesn't want to call her a liar on national TV.
Very well could be. Like I was talking about earlier, he didn't want to put a stake in the ground. He did not want to own his opinion, his perception. I believe that's why there was a lot of groupthink. And I think we believed her instead of owning it. Yeah. And there could be a lot of criticism on his opinion just because this case has been very polarizing. Some people have really supported the verdict and other people have not. And since because it's polarizing, it's hard to take a stand because of any type of pushback. That is a possibility that could be going through his mind of why he's not exactly what you're saying, that perhaps he doesn't want to call her a liar.
Okay, Tyler says he's trying to convince himself. He keeps saying, I think.
Yes, I like that, Tyler. It definitely could be that too. That's right. It's almost like that. Okay, I'm going back in time for anyone who ever read that. What is that children's book? That little caboose, the little red caboose. I think I can. I can. Right, to jazz himself up, like he can go up that hill as a little train, as a little caboose. So that's what your comment made me think of, and it definitely could be that to convince himself. That's a good point.
Tyler says he plans on writing a book about his time on the jury. He has an agenda.
Maybe. How many times did he have to tell us that he had 350 pages of notes, copious notes? Okay, great. But in all of those 350 pages of notes, how much did you actually share? Not much. So it begs the question, why are you not sharing it? And what are you doing with this big stack of 350 pages of notes? Definitely could want to write a tell-all.
Lavender Smile Hairstyle says he came across as not being sure.
Absolutely. You're spot on there. I completely agree with you.
Nikki says, is he being paid for this interview?
I don't know the answer to that question. Probably not, but I don't know. Do you know, Mel?
I would imagine so, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, Santonia says, I always stop people when they include me into something as such and say, I've always been told don't allow someone to speak for me.
I agree. Yeah, we should have our own voices because then there's no confusion and there's no ambiguity and there's no reason for why each person shouldn't speak for themselves. You don't want anyone to put words in your mouth. At least I wouldn't think so.
Right. Good point. Lem says, are strippers and rich women dropping bands and dancing in private dancing need to go to jail? He's a freak. His house, his business, money isn't power. That's a mindset. Only God is power. That's pretty interesting. Tyler says, notice how he keeps looking down and breaking eye contact. Can't be trusted.
Okay, that's an interesting observation, Tyler, and I would like to expand that a little bit for you. For some people, it definitely can be. For some people and I'm not talking about the alternate juror, George, so no one put words in my mouth. I'm talking in generalities. For some people, if they're not telling the truth, they will disconnect. It's not as intimidating and it's easier to not tell the truth when they're looking away or they're doing something different. Okay. For other people, some people just don't like eye contact. It makes them uncomfortable. It makes them nervous. So they will break away as they're talking. And the research does show that when we are talking and listening, we tend to have more eye contact when we're talking. No, than when we're listening than when we're talking. I hope I didn't confuse that. I'll correct it if I did. So we tend to have, we don't have the same amount, because when you're talking, a lot of times, for me, I'm very visual. So what that means is, as I'm talking, I might think of something, I might see it in my mind's eyes, and I look away, not because I'm not being forthright or candid or truthful. It's because I'm thinking of something. Or I also have like squirrel moments. Something could be happening and it gets my attention. So I'll look and then I'll come back and I'll continue a conversation. So for some people, they just get easily distracted. So I'm giving you these other examples just to say it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is hiding something. It could be. And this is where baseline behavior is really important to assess, to come up with every person. And then if you do have a question, you want to ask a non-threatening question. You can say, hey, so Mel, I'm going to use you. Hey, Mel, I'm getting the impression that there might be something uncomfortable about this question for you. So I'm not making an assumption. I'm asking a question and it gives you an out, but it's also going to give me some information.
Okay, that's awesome. Santonia says you have excellent questions. Okay, thank you very much. Tyler says good lawyers know how people behave. It's a byproduct of dealing with people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Tyler, I'm going to tell you why. Because in that courtroom, watching the defense and their cross-examination, they all had a different strategy. So with different attorneys, with different witnesses. And in my opinion, what they were doing, depending on what their end goal was, right? That determined how they spoke with that witness, the types of questions that they asked. And I also think it had an impact on the way they communicated, like their tone of voice and their likability with the witness. So I completely agree with that. A lot of it is strategic, in my opinion.
Okay. Fraser says, I like the way you wear a suit and tie with a Yankees hat, a man of fine taste. Thank you very much. Tyler says he can be easily swayed and he's not a leader. He's a follower. Feds knew this. Anyone can see this. Interesting.
Yeah, well, I think we've talked about some behavioral indicators that suggest he might be more of a follower than a leader.
Okay. We reached our time so fast.
Yeah, we did. It kind of.
And I always like to keep to the time that we discussed. We reached an hour. It's been a great hour. I enjoyed everything you broke down. It's amazing to me, all the information that you know about this. It's like mind-blowing. Thank you for coming on.
A lot of years of study and practice.
Could you just tell us real quick, briefly, before you leave, just tell us, how did you become a body language expert?
That's a loaded question. Because it's more of a serious answer, can we save it for next time?
We could do that.
I don't want to rush through it because some people may have some questions.
All right, so we have our first question for the next time that you come on. And also we could finish the video because I think toward the end it's very enlightening what he says. So we look forward. We have a lot. We would love to have you come back next week and we'll do this too again. All right.
I would enjoy it. Thank you.
Thanks
everybody for coming.
And what's your website again?
Oh, BlancaCobb.com. On YouTube, it's Blanca Cobb, Body Language Expert. On Instagram, TikTok, and X, it is at Blanca Cobb. So please be sure to follow and subscribe.
Thank you for coming on. I really enjoyed our time in the courtroom. I look forward to working on other cases with you. And I look forward to you coming back and blessing us with your presence and breaking down body language. And also you're into psychology, so that's amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
It was an honor. Thank you. Until next time.
All right. Awesome.